City on edge. We begin top story tonight with the manhunt for the suspect who opened fire on a crowded New York City subway train. But now we have an image and a name of a man police are calling a person of interest. Police want to speak to this man, 62-year-old Frank James. Right now they are offering a $50,000 reward for any information leading to James. Cell phone video showing commuters fleeing from the train as it pulled into a Brooklyn station during the morning rush hour. The wounded, bloody, falling onto the platform. Videos from inside the train showing passengers trying to administer aid to the victims. At least 10 people shot. Hundreds of law enforcement officials swarming the area after the suspect, who was believed to be wearing a gas mask and a construction vest, fled the scene. Schools in the area told to shelter in place. Authorities say the suspect also left behind a bag of smoke canisters and fireworks. His gun, they believe, jammed. Police finding this U-Haul late today in Brooklyn. Police say James rented the van in Philadelphia. Again, that's the person of interest, and they found the vehicle's key at the shooting scene. And a witness who was on that train this morning joins Top Story, what he told us in just a few moments. But we begin with NBC Nightly News anchor Lester Holt, who leads us off from Brooklyn.
At 8:24, the morning commute turned to complete chaos. A gunman opening fire on a crowded rush hour train in Brooklyn. Panicked passengers rushed off subway cars. The injured lay on the platform. Blood everywhere.
I saw maybe a 16-year-old kid. He was sitting on the steps coming out the train station, and he had a bullet in his knee.
That's the sort of terror that I haven't seen before since 9/11.
Police say the suspect was on this Manhattan-bound train as it pulled into the 36th Street stop. They say he put on a gas mask, then opened 2 canisters with smoke.
He then opened fire, striking multiple people on the subway and in the platform.
You can hear that gunfire in this video from the next car over, where Kenneth Footsmith was headed to work.
We hear a loud bang and then followed by lots of screaming, and we see white smoke starting to billow and fill up the train car, and people running at the doors that separate the train cars and banging on them, screaming for help, almost like a horror movie.
Conrad Adderer was in the station.
Guy just came up to the station booth, and he was his legs were bloody. I basically made a decision to get out of there.
Tonight, the NYPD says they have identified a person of interest, Frank R. James, with addresses in Philadelphia and Wisconsin. Officials say a U-Haul key found at the scene led them to James. A massive manhunt is now underway to find him, though officials say they don't know if he has a connection to the subway shooting. The suspect left behind a 9mm gun, a hatchet, and this backpack filled with smoke canisters and fireworks. Law enforcement sources tell NBC News the station's surveillance camera was not working. Officials don't believe the gunman said anything as he opened fire and say so far there's no indication of terrorism.
We do not know the motive at this time, but we're not ruling anything out.
At least 29 people were injured, 10 with gunshot wounds. According to the NYPD, all of the victims are expected to survive. Sunset Park is a vibrant, diverse neighborhood, home to many Asian and Hispanic residents. The incident comes as the city grapples with rising crime, a major issue for the city's new mayor, who is currently quarantining with COVID.
As a New Yorker, as a former cop, you know the risk of these subways, the vulnerability of these subways. Can they be properly secured?
Yes, they can. We have done it, and we will continue to do so. We are going to have a doubling of our patrol strength in the subway system.
Tonight, the governor saying enough is enough.
It has to end, and it ends now. And we are sick and tired of reading headlines about crime, whether they're mass shootings or the loss of a teenage girl or a 13-year-old. It has to stop.
Lester Holt leading us off tonight. As we've reported, the NYPD has now named Frank James a person of interest in today's subway attack. Police say he rented that U-Haul in Philadelphia that authorities believe is connected to the shooting. NBC's Ron Allen has the latest on the citywide manhunt. And Ron, investigators tonight releasing a lot more information.
Well, earlier today, we learned that the suspect left a lot of things on the train, including the handgun that he fired, a backpack where he was carrying a lot of other materials. That we now know that there was a U-Haul key there as well. So that apparently was the big break in the case, just tracking from things that the suspect left at the crime scene. So there's that. It was also striking that apparently he fired some 33 rounds. A lot of us were kind of feeling, well, there were 20 people who were wounded, but you would think that if someone opened fire in a crowded subway car that there would have been more casualties and, God forbid, fatalities. That didn't happen. So it's striking that there were so many shots that were fired. The investigators are very careful to say that they only are trying to connect this guy, James, now to this van, not to the attack on the subway. But it seems clear that A plus B what leads to C, and so on and so forth. And they've moved through this very quickly and very methodically through the day. And they now have a photo of him, which was something that we had been asking about all day, because there's obviously so many security cameras around, so much surveillance, that you would think that they would be able to do that. But it appears that they perhaps have a driver's license or something like that, because they now have what they think is a fairly positive identity of the individual connected to this U-Haul van. That van is not far from here. When it got there, how it got there, whether the suspect left the train station and went there, it's unclear. All of that is still a mystery. And of course, the biggest mystery is where this individual is at this hour tonight.
All right, Ron Allen with the latest reporting from the scene tonight. Ron, we appreciate that for insight and analysis on the investigation. I want to bring in Terrence Monahan. He served as the NYPD chief of the department from 2018 to 2021. He's also a consultant for NBC News. Terrence, you heard this news conference, right? What stood out to you as the most important clue in all of this? We have a picture, we have a name, but we still don't have a man in custody.
Well, the most important thing is obviously getting them in custody. But, you know, you're looking at an NYPD that less than 11 hours after the incident were able to identify a suspect. And that's just the great detective work. The idea of locating that van, finding out who rented it, go back to the location where it was rented, identify that person, go through video, go through LPR readings to see where that van traveled. Look at video from where it was recovered. I believe they may have recovered some video of the male exiting that vehicle early this morning, around 5-something this morning, matching the description of doing the shooting. It's putting these little pieces together that the investigators need to do.
And sometimes just being lucky, right? Finding that U-Haul key and being able to trace it to the van. I want to talk about a lot of the other clues they found here. They found gasoline. They found those fireworks. We've seen that images with the long wick as well. You have a 9mm Glock, right? Extended rounds, okay? He was wearing a construction hat, we know, and as well as an orange construction vest, so possibly a costume. We're not sure what he does, but he wanted to be maybe in disguise when he got into that train. And you have the U-Haul truck clearly carrying some supplies. I think they said he had a cart as well. What does that tell you?
Tells me this guy was looking to do some serious damage. That if he had been able to utilize everything that was recovered, this could have been a heck of a lot worse than it really was. It's bad now, but if he was able to set off all the smoke canisters, all the fireworks, and then utilize the magazines, the extended clip magazines. From what we hear in the gun jams, he wasn't able to continue firing, but he still got 33 rounds off. That's a tremendous amount of rounds in a small space. It's incredible no one's dead. Unbelievable. Only 10 people hit with 33 rounds in a small, confined area like a train. This could have been so much worse, as bad as it is.
You've analyzed crime scenes before. You've seen crimes, maybe not just like this one. What do you think he was trying to do? What do you think the ultimate plan was?
To kill as many people as possible. He wanted to cause maximum harm. You know,
start the smoke, the fireworks, just start shooting people.
And the idea of having a hatchet in there too. That's, you know, if I run out of bullets, I'm just going to go hand-to-hand combat with people. That seems to be the mentality that this individual had.
How hard is it going to be to find this man? 9 million people in the city of New York. You have a picture, you have a name. We know that he's 62 years old, lived in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. All of the city is going to be looking at this. Everyone's got a phone now. It's gotten harder and harder for criminals to get away, but he's got to jump on police.
Listen, they will track him down. This is, you know, part one is identification. Part two is getting him into custody. People now know who he is. People know him. From what I understand, he has a YouTube channel that he's posted on very recently. So people know who he is. People in Milwaukee know him. He has some history here in the Pennsylvania area. So people know who he is. There's no running. You know, this individual will be caught, and he'll be caught in short order.
Finally, Terrence, and I'll play devil's advocate here, if you will. There is a decision that had to be made by the NYPD, right? Release his image, release his name, or try to take him by surprise. Clearly, taking him by surprise may not be an option anymore. They need the public's help on this one. What does that tell you?
It's absolutely, you have to put out that, like you said before, there's 9 million New Yorkers looking around that can have eyes on this, can make that phone call, get them. There is no surprise. This is a major story. Obviously, it's a national story. This individual knows people are looking for him. He may want the attention. That may be what it's about. You know, we'll see once he's caught, once they analyze all his social media, and we'll get a little deeper into his motivation.
A $50,000 reward for any information. They're asking people to call Crime Stoppers. I didn't catch this, but I want to make sure I didn't miss it. Did they say if he was still armed and dangerous, should he be treated that way?
Absolutely. This individual was completely armed when he went onto that system. Who knows what else he has somewhere else in the city? We don't know. So anyone running into him, don't approach him. Call 911. Let the NYPD do what they do best.
Terrence Monahan for us. Terrence, we appreciate your analysis. For more on this, we want to bring in Kenneth Footsmith, who witnessed this shooting unfold from the subway car next to where the attack took place. Kenneth, we just heard you there in Lester's piece describing those harrowing moments. You know, we're all New Yorkers here. For most of us living in a major city, we're used to sort of walking around with our heads on a swivel. When you first heard those bangs, did you think something was happening, or did you think it was nothing at all?
I was hoping it was a mechanical fire, honestly. The sound that really kind of started this whole event for me, I really hoped it was some sort of train error or some sort of malfunction, because it didn't sound like, as I've been calling it, a normal subway noise. It's something that got me to take my headphones off and got the attention of everyone on the train. But then it was quickly followed by, I'm sure y'all have seen the Instagram videos of the gentleman banging on the door to the subway, trying to get in. And that was my car. He was banging on our connector door to try and open it so people could escape the train. And that's when I started noticing the smoke in the train car behind, actually. And it quickly started to fill up the car and became very thick and almost impossible to see through.
When you're seeing this and you're seeing people that are injured, how do you know who is friend and who is foe in this situation? Or did you really not have any idea what was happening?
I didn't. We had no communication from MTA about this situation. We were only going off what the people who were running off the train car once we got to the platform said. And it was hysteria at that point. It was people screaming, "Bomb, gone, he's shooting, get down, he's an MTA clothes, he has a gas mask." So there really was no coherent kind of thoughts or idea about what was going on. I actually thought that the gentleman who was trying to get in at first to our train car could have possibly been the shooter, with just kind of the ferocity he was trying to get in. And then once I transferred to the local train, as I was instructed by the conductor on the platform, that was my first thought, was, what if the shooter's on this train car with me? And I had to keep my vigilance up, and it's not a comfortable feeling to live in fear.
Were other New Yorkers from we've seen in these videos helping those people who were injured out immediately, or did it take a minute? I mean, we saw a lot of these people sort of collapse there on the platform.
I think that was definitely the confusion that kind of led to this pause in other people helping each other, because I saw that on my train car as well. We took at least a minute before we even tried to open our door to see if we could let them in, but on our side it was jammed as well. I really did see that kind of New York came together and support each other once people got on that local train and the people escaped that smoked out train car. I saw others running into the train car or towards it, picking people up, reassuring the physically shaken, or trying to get those who were hysterical under control. And it really, that's what made me feel better in that moment, was kind of this sense of unity with New York.
Kenneth, you know, the gunman, the bomber in this situation, whatever you want to call him, was able to get away. You take the subway every day to go to work. Are you going to take the subway tomorrow?
I actually took work off tomorrow for the rest of the week. But if I did not take off work, I would not take the subway tomorrow. I actually have committed to taking the bus, and unfortunately having to pony up for the Uber prices, because my life is something I can't play with, nor my safety.
We do want to turn and switch gears now to the skyrocketing inflation sweeping across the country, hammering American households. New numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows inflation rose 8.5% in March compared to a year ago. It's the biggest yearly increase in over 40 years. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Kristen Welker has the latest.
America's unrelenting inflation crisis keeps getting worse, with today's news that it's accelerated to 8.5%, a 41-year high. Prices surging across the board. Gas prices up 48% over last year. Food prices jumping nearly 9%, including meat, poultry, fish, and eggs spiking nearly 14%. Housing costs surging too, with rents up 5%. In Pennsylvania, school bus driver Renee Schultz says soaring grocery bills have left her struggling to feed her family. Now she's turning to a food pantry.
It's made it difficult. Sometimes you have to make a choice on, what bill's going to not get paid so that you can make sure that you got food on the table.
And in California, plumber Louis Ray says the cost of parts have surged 40 to 60%. What's the toughest part about this moment and the increased prices?
The toughest part is just not knowing what the future holds. Actually, I'm not just a business owner. I'm a human being. I have a household. I have a car note.
And today, a new government forecast predicts gas prices this summer will be the highest since 2014. Today in Iowa, President Biden saying he's boosting the sale and production of ethanol-blended gasoline as a way to alleviate pain at the pump, and again blaming Vladimir Putin's Ukraine invasion.
I'm doing everything within my power by executive orders to bring down the price and address the Putin price hike.
But in reality, inflation has been soaring above 5% for nearly a year. And our latest NBC News poll shows just 6% of Americans blame rising prices on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. 38% blame President Biden and his policies. Today, the president facing criticism from Republicans and a key Democrat, Senator Joe Manchin, writing, the Federal Reserve and the administration failed to act fast enough, calling the response, quote, half measures.
All right, NBC News Chief White House correspondent Kristen Welker joins us now. Kristen, I guess the only question for the Biden administration is, when is this going to end, right? Our colleague Phil LeBeau over at CNBC was talking to top automakers who say because of this supply chain crisis, prices are going to keep going up. They have not peaked. Does the White House have any idea when things will stop rising and at least plateau?
Well, the administration is pointing to the fall, Tom. They hope that's when these prices start to really come down ahead of the midterms, of course. And right now, they're touting signs of economic strength, including those good job numbers, a low unemployment rate, and a 23-cent decline in gas prices over the last month. Now, you can expect the White House to propose some more measures to try to mitigate the high cost of gas when Congress is back in session after the Easter recess. But they know that this is the #1 issue dogging the president. Tom.
All right, Kristen Welker for us tonight from the White House. Kristen, thank you. We want to turn now to the war in Ukraine. Tonight, there are new accusations. Russia dropped a poisonous substance on the city of Mariupol, causing civilians to suffer from respiratory failure. The Pentagon said it cannot confirm the reports, but said if they are true, it would be deeply concerning. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez has a story.
Every day since Russia's retreat, new atrocities are being revealed. This is Makariv, about 45 miles west of Kyiv. Russian forces took the villages surrounding it, but were held back from the city center by Ukrainian soldiers. This man, who asked us not to show his face, is one of those defenders. Today he showed us what's left of this apartment that authorities just searched for the first time.
The rocket tore through this wall and landed right here in this kitchen, the whole apartment incinerated. Neighbors say an older woman lived here, and sadly her remains are still in the other room.
So far, local officials say they found 130 bodies here. Late today, while talking about inflation, President Biden calling Russia's actions genocide.
None of it should hinge on whether a dictator declares war and commits genocide in half a world away.
And now there's growing concern about an unconfirmed report from the Azov Battalion, part of the Ukrainian National Guard, accusing Russia of using a poisonous substance of unknown origin in Mariupol. The Ukrainian government, the U.S., and others are now investigating if a chemical weapon was used. While today, Russian President Vladimir Putin said peace talks with the Ukrainians had reached a dead end. He also insisted his main goal is to help the people of the eastern Donbass region. Tell that to teacher Katerina Hetz back here in Makariv, who showed us how Russian rockets shattered her world in her music classroom.
The destruction stretches for miles. This was a kindergarten. It was shelled at least twice. Clearly not a military target.
Fortunately, none of the children were here at the time, but Katerina told us Russian troops shot and killed a janitor as he tried to escape the city with his family. I get angry, she says. The Russians don't realize what they're doing. Today, Putin claimed his soldiers' mission was noble. So how does he explain this?
And Tom, we keep hearing harrowing story after harrowing story in the Kyiv suburbs. In that same town, we heard from Ukrainian authorities that a man and woman were driving out of town trying to escape Russian forces when they were shot and killed. The Ukrainian soldiers were able to retrieve them and bury them in a shallow grave temporarily until they could be exhumed. But now we're hearing from a senior U.S. defense official that there are more concerns in the east. That 8-mile-long Russian military convoy is still moving, albeit slowly, but it's another ominous sign of what may be to come.
No end to this war in sight. All right, Gabe Gutierrez for us tonight. Gabe, thank you. For more on the developments out of Ukraine and here in the U.S., I want to bring in NBC News and MSNBC military analyst General Barry McCaffrey. So, General McCaffrey, I want to start with the comments President Biden said today. He used the term genocide. Does that change anything in the way the U.S. or NATO approaches this war?
Well, you know, it's a legal term. It'll be fought over the coming decade. What we can say is, without question, as a strategy, at Putin's approval and backing, the Russian armed forces are using indirect fires, rocket artillery, aircraft bombs, targeting deliberately the civil population to kill them, to cut off their food supplies with starvation. There's no question that they are engaging the civilian, innocent, vulnerable population as their prime target.
And we're seeing these reports nearly every day out of Ukraine about how civilians are being killed for no reason whatsoever. I do want to ask you about this report coming from Ukraine about chemical weapons, because that seems like it is a red line for both NATO and the United States. If the U.S. or NATO can confirm that chemical weapons were indeed used, how does that change the dynamic of this war?
Dramatically, immediately. It's hard to say publicly what the private discussions are at this point. I would think if it was a deliberate policy of employing chemical weapons, which are fairly ineffective against military forces that are prepared, U.S. Army, protective suits, early warning, medical care, a protective mask, but against civilians, they are deadly. They would be devastating. I think we would enter the war, and I think we should if that's the case.
So in Gabe's story, we saw a kindergarten being shelled, evidence of that. Explain to our viewers why, and I'm not saying one is okay and the other is not, but why are these chemical weapons a red line when the bombing of innocent civilians has been happening for weeks? What is it about chemical weapons that would change the calibration for NATO and the U.S.?
Well, actually, it's a good question. I mean, you know, it hardly makes a difference to a mother and her family whether she's being murdered by a 1,000-pound bomb dropped by a Russian aircraft or by chemical weapons. However, I think there's a particularly appalling nature to chemical weapons. We saw the Russians and Assad use them in Syria against civilians and kill literally hundreds of people and sicken some permanently for the rest of their life. So it's a particularly appalling, outlawed by international treaty, to include one that the Russians signed. I think if they cross that line, it's just an easy call for NATO to say, that's it. Now we got to directly go after chemical warfare firing units, artillery, rockets, aircraft, whatever we have to do.
You think Putin would be that bold, that stupid, that cruel to use chemical weapons in this war?
It would be entirely illogical. I cannot imagine the colonel or general that would tell him, yeah, this is a good policy. It will draw down the wrath, the ire of the global community. But they've done it before. And so we should be prepared. And hopefully we're telling them outside of public channels, don't do this, or the reaction will be direct and immediate.
General Barry McCaffrey for Top Story tonight. General, we always appreciate your time. Thank you. We turn now back here at home to the grim new milestone in the pandemic. More than 500 million cases have been reported all over the globe since it began. And in Shanghai, chilling new video from inside a quarantine center. Take a look. Over there in China, a woman screaming to be let out with food scattered on the floor. People on social media reporting they've been stuck inside the converted expo center for, get this, more than 2 weeks as the city of 26 million remains on lockdown. Meanwhile, here at home, cases are rising again, fueled by the BA2 variant. Could restrictions return days before the holiday weekend? Miguel Almaguer has more.
Following the trend of previous COVID waves that have washed across the nation, tonight pockets of the Northeast are again seeing the most significant spike in new infections. While the numbers are nowhere near Omicron's surge and authorities do not expect hospitals to be overwhelmed, the massive decline in testing and unreported results from home kits may be skewing the real rise in cases.
It certainly is being undercounted, Miguel, because I mean, I know people myself who have no symptoms or have mild symptoms, get tested, it's positive, they stay home the way they should, but they don't tell anybody.
With infections up 15% nationwide, the daily case count is still just a fraction of January's. But in Philadelphia, where mask mandates return next week, local officials fear the start of a new wave.
There may be a surge in cases, but if you note, there's a very, very small chance of a person who's vaccinated and boosted of going on to a severe outcome.
Do you think Americans would be willing to accept the return to mask mandates?
I think that would be a problem, Miguel. People are so fatigued and tired of COVID that they just don't want to go back. The only thing we can do is to just try and encourage people that this will end. This will not go on forever.
Tonight, a weary nation facing an enduring pandemic.
And we have a two from Miguel Almaguer, actually joins us live now from Los Angeles. Miguel, with the mask mandate for airplanes set to expire next week, is there a possibility that it could be extended?
Well, that's certainly on the table, Tom. As you know, Dr. Walensky from the CDC will ultimately have that decision. The airlines have lobbied for that mask mandate to come to an end, but we're seeing masks be re-implemented in cities like Philadelphia. So there seems to be a growing debate over whether this is the right time to do so. We should know in the next few days. Tom?
All right, Miguel Almaguer for us. Miguel, thank you. Still ahead tonight, the highway fireball, the moment a box truck crashed into an overpass and burst into flames. What we're learning about the other driver who sent that truck skidding out of control. And saved by the iPhone, how one woman led police to the man who stole her car with her 9-year-old son inside. Stay with us. Top Story is just getting started. We are back now with that dramatic car chase caught on camera. A man accused of stealing a car with a 9-year-old in the back seat. Helicopters crisscrossing the skies looking for the suspect. But it was the boy's mother and her quick thinking that led police to her son. NBC's Katie Beck has more.
Go, 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 go. As police speed through this Atlanta neighborhood, the 9-year-old boy they are racing to save, completely unaware the key to his rescue is right inside his pocket. Just be pit, just be pit.
Moments earlier in this Goodwill parking lot, the child left in the back seat of a running car as his mom briefly ran into the store. In a matter of seconds, a carjacker jumping in the front seat and speeding off. His mother quickly realizing she could use the Find My Phone app to track her son's location.
They're tracking the car to South Gordon.
Helicopters circling overhead, able to key in on the stolen vehicle as the mother fed GPS coordinates to the officers on the ground.
I got the car, Peoples and RDA.
Patrol cars racing to catch up, using a pit maneuver to drive the car off the road.
Open the f***ing door! Open the f***ing door! You're trying to kill us! You're trying to kill us!
The suspect handcuffed by police, put in the back of a squad car. The entire incident over in less than an hour. The 9-year-old able to escape through a backseat window. Comforted by the officers who saved him. Clearly shaken but unharmed.
You okay? Yes. You okay?
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna take you to your mom. You all right? You okay? You okay?
My mom called you?
Yeah, she did.
Okay.
Yeah, she did.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Tonight, law enforcement experts say this situation could have been far worse.
Time is not always on your side in these type of incidents. Don't leave your car running, not even for a hot second to run, turn around, turn your back to it. It can be going into this, and your child as well.
That suspect now charged with kidnapping, cruelty towards children, and felony theft. His lawyer has not responded to requests for comment. Katie Beck, NBC News.
Tonight, we're also tracking severe weather across the country. Millions from Minnesota to Louisiana on alert for large hail, damaging winds, and possible tornadoes. Several tornadoes touching down across central Arkansas, damaging homes and downing trees and power lines. New video showing massive hail also falling across the state. Widespread flooding stranding drivers near Little Rock. And heavy snow falling in the Rockies and northern plains, up to 30 inches possible in the Dakotas and Montana. Blizzard warnings there are in effect. There's a lot of weather brewing out at this hour, so I want to bring in our good friend Al Roker. Al, I know you're busy this week.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, Tom. We were hoping we could dodge this bullet, but it continues. We've got tornado watches now up in the upper Midwest, also in central Texas, severe thunderstorm watches as well as this system really gets itself together. 45 million people at risk tonight for damaging winds, strong tornadoes, and wind gusts of over 70 miles per hour with hail. Tomorrow it expands to 56 million people. Memphis, Nashville, St. Louis, Indianapolis, all in the bullseye. Several tornadoes, a few strong, and some of them at night. Of course, those being twice as deadly as the daytime tornadoes. And here's how we shape this up. Cold front pushing east. Blizzard conditions, as you mentioned, up in the northern plains. Violent storms, though, from Texas on all the way up to Minnesota. And then that system pushes further to the east. High rainfall rates and flooding possible, especially down to the south. We are looking for anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of rain, but some areas could see even more than that, Tom.
And, you know, we were teeing you up there for the winter weather out west. I know it's the springtime, but there's a lot of snow falling,
yeah,
huh?
I mean, this is, they get snow in April, but nothing quite like this. We're talking whiteout conditions, winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings, blizzard warnings stretching from northwestern Minnesota all the way into the Rockies, and snowfall amounts, some places already picking up to a foot to a foot and a half. We could see up to 3 feet of snow, especially through Montana, the Dakotas, and parts of the mountain regions. Tom?
All right, Al, we thank you for that. And Al sits down with former President Obama for a wide-ranging interview about climate change and sustainability. You can catch more of that interview tomorrow morning on the Today Show. All right, we look forward to that. When we come back, fake agents released. You remember the 2 men accused of pretending to be Homeland Security officers? Now out on bail. Why a judge denied prosecutors the request to keep them there. Stay with us. We are back now with Top Stories newsfeed, and we begin with an update on a story we brought you last week. 2 men accused of impersonating federal agents have been released on bail. A federal judge rejecting prosecutors' request to hold them, saying he didn't believe their claims the suspects had ties to Pakistani intelligence. Authorities say they posed as Department of Homeland Security officers for months, even getting close to Secret Service agents who had White House access. 2 drivers lucky to be alive after a fiery crash on a Minnesota highway. Take a look at this. Traffic cameras capturing the moment a car lost control on a ramp and crashed into a box truck. That truck then veering to the side of an overpass. You see there what happened. It burst into flames. The truck driver seen walking away from the burning wreckage. The other driver is also okay, but was arrested for driving while impaired. New York's lieutenant governor has resigned after he was arrested on campaign finance fraud charges. Brian Benjamin surrendered to federal authorities in Manhattan this morning. Federal prosecutors say he used his power as New York State senator to secure a state-funded grant in exchange for his own campaign contributions. They also allege he covered it up by falsifying campaign donor forms. Benjamin has not addressed those allegations. And 2 Kinder chocolate products recalled days before Easter over salmonella concerns. The FDA says the products, including the Mix chocolate treats basket, were manufactured at a facility in Belgium where salmonella was detected. The products were sold at Costco's and BJ's here in the U.S. So far, no U.S. illnesses, but more than 130 people have been sickened in Europe. We'll have more information on our website, NBCnews.com. And turning back now to that devastating subway shooting we've been following throughout the broadcast, 29 people admitted to area hospitals after the attack. Jesse Kirsch joins us now from outside one of those hospitals, NYU Langone in Brooklyn tonight. He's live for us. Jesse, you know, we heard that news conference earlier tonight. It's incredible that 30 rounds were fired and no one died in this incident, but people clearly were hurt. What can you tell our viewers tonight?
Yeah, and Tom, the NYPD is saying it was 23 who were injured, at least 10 who were shot. But we're hearing from hospitals, as you just mentioned, that the number is higher. So that also gives you a sense that this is still an unfolding situation. Authorities still trying to gather information. And we had seen that victim count climb throughout the day here, which we often see in these mass casualty events, because you have the people who are initially brought to the hospital and then those who get themselves to the hospitals later on. They initially flee on foot, try to just get to safety. And then when they are able to, they make their way to medical facilities. And that appears to be what happened here. We're told that people have injuries, including, of course, gunshot wounds. We also are told that people are suffering from smoke inhalation. And then it also sounds like there are people who are just injured in the frenzy of trying to get to safety, right? You're trying to get out with a crowd of people, so you might fall, stumble, hurt yourself, something to that effect. So it sounds like there are some injuries like that as well. Thankfully, everyone who was injured is expected to be okay. And as you mentioned, Tom, that is remarkable considering the firepower that police say the suspect had.
Jesse, you're about a mile from that subway station where this all happened. Tonight, there is a manhunt for that person of interest. They've released his photo, released his name. There's a $50,000 reward right now. What's the scene where you're at? Do you still feel a police presence there? Are people still on edge?
It's frankly very calm and feels quite normal where we are, Tom. Earlier in the day, there was a substantial NYPD presence visible outside, several officers, probably upwards of a dozen out here. And that police presence has evolved throughout the day. And as I look behind me right now, those NYPD vans that were out here earlier are not visible here right now. And directly on the other side of this camera lens is a park. There are children who've been playing in the park, going down the slides up until about 10 minutes ago on the swing. So life on this strip appears to be about as normal as could be, but certainly you have to think in the back of some subway riders' minds, and many New Yorkers are subway riders, they're going to be thinking likely about what has unfolded today, Tom.
All right, Jesse, thank you. Next up, Oklahoma's governor signing a new strict anti-abortion bill. If it goes into effect this summer, providers will face a felony charge for conducting an abortion with punishments, including potential prison time and a fine. Maura Barrett has more on how this affects women there and across the country.
Welcome, everybody.
Tonight, Oklahoma's governor signing a new law criminalizing abortions, one of the most severe in the country.
We want Oklahoma to be the most pro-life state in the country. We want to outlaw abortion.
The new law now making it a felony to perform an abortion at any point in a known pregnancy, punishable by up to 10 years in prison. The pregnant women involved would not be criminally charged. The burden instead falls on abortion providers, like those at Planned Parenthood or the Trust Women Clinic.
We knew that it was coming, but that doesn't make it any easier.
In Oklahoma, we may have to pivot away from providing abortion care.
The law takes effect this summer. The only exclusion is to save the life of a mother. No exceptions in cases of rape or incest. We spoke with protesters outside the Oklahoma State House last week.
What do you make of the fact that this fight has gone on now for decades, or is being rehashed again now?
Well, it seems ludicrous, really.
Yeah, and I think it's just a way for politicians to win votes when they really don't care about what goes on in a woman's body any other time.
The White House calling the new law a, quote, unconstitutional attack on women's rights. Experts say it's sure to face legal challenges.
The bill is clearly unconstitutional. It's unique. It's a provision that criminalizes people who provide abortion.
But the bill comes as part of an aggressive push by Republican leaders in 28 states to restrict or ban abortions. Just a few days ago, the Idaho Supreme Court temporarily blocked a law that bans abortions after 6 weeks, after Planned Parenthood sued. The U.S. Supreme Court is also expected to rule on a Mississippi law that bans abortions after 15 weeks. Their decision could severely erode or overturn Roe v. Wade and impact the constitutional success of these latest measures.
It takes a long time to mount one of these challenges, and of course the fear is that the Supreme Court will change the law.
Though Oklahoma's new law might be challenged, anti-abortion activists say it sets a good precedent.
It's definitely a step in the right direction. We can no longer deny that the unborn child is there, and he or she should be given rights.
Advocates for women's health, though, see it differently.
We are incredibly disappointed that lawmakers are disregarding the health and well-being of their constituents.
Maura Barrett, NBC News.
Okay, for weeks now, we've been telling you about the air travel troubles affecting flyers nationwide. Several airlines are struggling to recover from a string of bad weather and major staffing issues and are now canceling thousands of flights through the summer. Here's NBC's aviation correspondent Tom Costello.
After weeks of flight delays, thousands of canceled flights, and mounting airport aggravation.
Had a 4-hour delay, so I'm feeling a little deflated and just hopeful that we get there.
JetBlue and Alaska Airlines both say they simply don't have the staff to fly their upcoming schedule. JetBlue proactively trimming its schedule through the busy summer travel season by 10%, 150 flights per day. Bad weather has only added to JetBlue's problems these past few weeks.
People are sick back there. We got to get off this plane.
Forcing some flights to divert to other airports. JetBlue says the safety of our customers and crew members is our first priority, and our pilots are well trained to manage severe weather. Meanwhile, Alaska Airlines, struggling with an ongoing pilot shortage, is cutting its schedule by 2% through June.
For many airlines, their eyes were bigger than their stomach. They ended up scheduling more flights than they were actually able to operate.
Fewer airline seats and higher jet fuel prices mean higher ticket prices. Domestic tickets now averaging $342 round trip, up 35% from last year, up 11% from 3 years ago.
Travel midweek, fly Tuesdays and Wednesdays, you'll get cheaper rates and you'll avoid a lot of the traffic.
Travel pros say now is the time to start shopping for your summer vacation flights. If you see a good price, lock it in. Tickets are only going to get even more expensive over the coming weeks and months. Tom?
All right, coming up, the deadly tropical storm slamming the Philippines. The rescue's now underway. That's next. All right, we are back now with Top Stories Global Watch and the deadly tropical storm slamming the Philippines. New video showing rescuers racing to evacuate people by boat as roads turned into rivers. One group pulled from floodwaters by a bulldozer. So far, at least 30 people are dead, thousands more evacuated. The storm has since weakened, but lingering rains have hampered efforts to rescue more people. Record rainfall also turning deadly in South Africa. Take a look. Video shows torrents of muddy water sweeping through the streets of Durban after mudslides swept away homes and roads. At least 45 people have died there, but officials warn the number could rise. Scientists believe climate change is causing worsening floods and droughts along South Africa's eastern coast. Thanks so much for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.